give you a decent following. Roxy asked me to give you some update on funding. And I told Carl Samp out in the hallway, if I had the answers to funding, we wouldn't be here today, we wouldn't be having this conference, because I'd be covering your whole territory. But first, I think what I'm going to do is just give you a quick overview of who we are, where we came from, and some of the things that we've been doing, and some of the costs and investments that it takes to be in this business. So let's see if I run this right. All right. Consolidated Telephone is out of Brainerd, Minnesota. Incorporated in 1950, started dealing, offering service in 52. You'll get a chuckle out of this, I'll just tell you, it took 2 years to get an RUS loan back in 1950. And I'll give you an update later here. We serve the, I hope you can see the red areas there. Those are the 10 original ILEC exchanges that we serve, and the original co-op areas. And the blue areas are areas that we compete, just like you heard from Tim Brinkman. We compete in Brainerd, Baxter, Nisswa, Crosby, and Little Falls. What I'm going to show you here is all the green areas. These green areas in the last 4 years in the city of Randall, these have all been rebuilt with fiber to the home in the last 4 years. And the blue area up here in Audi is being finished this year. I do not have funding for Leader, Randall, and Freedom at this time. So, but our goal is to get all the co-op members in those regions fiber to the home. I was going to ask a question. Does anybody have any idea how much money it took to build those areas? I just want somebody to throw out a couple of numbers. What do you think it took? How many? 30? I won't say high or low. Another? One more? What do you think?
25.
How much?
25.
25? Sally, you went the wrong direction. That's $49 million, folks. $49 million of loan money. Every dollar has to be paid back. Just to give you a little perspective. This next slide is going to get me in trouble with this group. CTC does own spectrum. We own 700 megahertz. We own it over Isanti, Mille Lacs, Kennebec, Pine, Aitken, Carleton. And we currently use it for fixed broadband. Some of you probably are saying, well, why aren't you in my area? Right now, we have two towers, one at Brainerd and one at the Gull Lake Tower. And we have 3 towers. We have one by Mora, Princeton, and Cambridge. And it's a long story how we got there. You don't have time today to hear that. But it's basically obsolete equipment. I heard Steve say, or Mark say that, or Steve said in his area he gets 1 meg. This equipment won't quite get you 1 meg. And the next question you might pose to me is say, why haven't you changed it out? Well, one, the equipment that we know that works doesn't quite meet our budget. We can't make money by putting it on the tower. And 2, some less expensive equipment has come to the market, but it's not quite ready to be put into service. We're testing it. So this 700 megahertz is great spectrum, travels a long ways. The technology's coming, but there's still problems with it. Either too expensive or the newer equipment hasn't been tested fully. A little history about CTC. Everybody's talking about partnerships and so forth. We looked at overbuilding Brainerd and Baxter in 2002. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. That would have been a fiber bill. In 2004, we partnered with the Brainerd School District. But we weren't the only partner. We were the service provider partner, and we were the construction company. But we partnered with ISD 181, St. Joseph's Hospital, Brainerd City, Baxter City, Crow Wing County, and of course us. In 2009, we again partnered on another project with Crow Wing County to extend the fiber east of Brainerd to a county shop, highway department facility, and also to the Brainerd Airport. That same year, we went into talks with Little Falls School District 482 and we ended up connecting three school buildings down there at that time in 2009. 2011, we began additional discussions with Little Falls to build fiber from the downtown area to the north side. And the partners that ended up being in there was the Little Falls EDA, Initiative Foundation, Region 5, ISD 482, and a private company called Atomic Learning. I think anybody in the school business knows about Atomic Learning. They write school software and sell it in about 30 countries across the world. But the thing I want to note here is, it takes time to do those things, folks. We started talks in 2011. We finished the construction in November of 2013. It takes time to get through all the details. Also in 2011, we began discussions with Arrowhead Electric Co-op up in Lutzen, Minnesota, to provide wholesale telephone and internet. Why would we do that? Well, they were recipients of a stimulus project, fiber to the home. They're hanging like 75% of the fiber on their own electric poles. And so we started talks in 2011, and we fired up the first services in October 2013. This next slide just kind of gives you a visual of the distance between us. It's about 200 miles between the two of us. But the reason this worked is it's basically two co-ops having basic same mission statements. What I want to show you here is what makes these projects a reality. And I can't emphasize enough, it takes local champions. Somebody that shares the same dream, vision, or mission with you. In Brainerd, it was the current, he's since retired, but it was Jerry Walseth and the whole school board. That was a huge project. There was 40 miles fiber ring around Brainerd Baxter, and then a lateral run 14 miles up to Nisswa. Huge project. Crow Wing County, it took the city administrator, Tim Houle, and the county attorney to push this through because there's plenty of naysayers. Down in Little Falls, it was the superintendent and IT director. And again, back in Little Falls, it was Carol Anderson, the EDA director, and the school people. And of course, Atomic Learning could not get enough bandwidth from the incumbent. They needed fiber in there. But it takes local champions to make these things work. And you got to have staying power. All of these projects I'm talking to you took years to come to fruition. You asked about funding. I am not an expert on funding. I do know that we got a big bill to pay. My banker is in the room too, so I got to watch what I say here. RUS is our banker. But I want to give you some history. Last year, RUS released 11% of their funds. Only 11%. And you're saying, why is that? Well, even 60-year-old companies like us are finding it difficult to come up with a financial pro forma that passes the test. It's all about the numbers. Can you pay it back? Most of these loans are 18, 20-year loans. There's uncertainty. Back to that green area that I showed you, we're an ILEC, rural ILEC, so we do get support payments. That's the only reason we were able to get that loan. We get support payments from the Universal Service Fund. But the FCC and the infamous wisdom is changing that. They basically capped the fund and frozen the payments to companies like CTC, and they're trying to take money from there and give it to the big companies to incent them to get broadband into areas just like what you folks live. And that's a good thing, but there's a whole number of ramifications that we feel that the FCC could do a better job with the Universal Service Fund. Remember, the only people that pay into the USF fund is people with telephone lines. There's no broadband, there's no, well, you can call it a tax, you can call it whatever you want, but there's no subsidy being paid into a fund by broadband providers. Just to give you an update too on RUS, our $49 million loan took about 2.5 years to get. We started in 2008, we got it in 2009. So nothing's really changed since 1950. Remember when I told you it took 2 years back then? It still takes 2 years. But that's because they go through that application with fine-tooth home to make sure that it's feasible. It is an expensive process because you need consultant help to do that. The final package is probably 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. I'm going to jump to CAF update. That's Connect America Fund, or that's the new name of the fund that the FCC has named it. Due to the FCC reform, they rolled out phase 1. It was a one-time payment for large carriers. They ran into some issues with that. They actually were giving money out to large carriers to put some broadband in right over the top of a number of stimulus projects. So the FCC identified that and said, well, we're going to have a second round of phase 1 CAF funding. They put additional conditions on that. One, that it's not supposed to be used over the top of other providers, that it's not supposed to be used for if there's already broadband there. And the large carriers are able to break down their areas and take that money and put it into smaller blocks or census blocks. And they've done that. Some companies have done that. There's supposed to be a phase 2 of funding, of CAF funding. There's no model yet. There's no rules. Instead of one-time payments, they're saying that there's supposedly proposed 5 years of payments. It's saying that those large carriers in their service areas, they're going to have to adopt it statewide. If they don't adopt statewide requirement, in other words, if they take the money, they have to bring broadband statewide, that then those dollars will be put up for basically auction for carriers like CTC. But again, there's no model, there's no rules yet, but there's supposed to be a phase 2 CAF funding. We, quite frankly, are anxiously awaiting that. It will have an impact on small companies. If the large carriers in the state of Minnesota do not take that money on a statewide basis, there is an opportunity for other carriers to go after that money. Minnesota funding. You heard Diane Wells. I'm not qualified to speak to this. You know, there's 100 million, there's 25 million. I will give you an opinion of our industry. And Bernadine just brought it up. It's in the details. Underserved or unserved. If you've got limited dollars, I just told you it took $50 million to do six service areas. If you're only going to get $25 to $100 million, do you want that to go to underserved areas, or do you want it to go in this pilot project, or do you want it to go to unserved areas? I would suggest that it should probably go to unserved areas. My summary to you on funding: you got to concentrate. I did put the word unserved here, but you got to concentrate on under and unserved areas. Don't get hung up on technologies. I suggest you partner with a reliable service provider. I know a lot of you in the room, and I know, for instance, Sally at Leech Lake. She's looking at partnering with a reliable service provider in order to get this done. This is not an easy business to get into, nor is it an easy business to maintain. Projects will not succeed if there's no champion and/or champions with sustainability. And it's not going to happen overnight, as we all know. In a lot of areas it still hasn't happened. But it's going to take patience and perseverance. So I'm trying to get you guys back on, make sure you keep you on time. So I'm going to open it up to questions. Boring presentation. Okay. Yes? From Outing to Little Falls, it's 45 miles, and from Crosby, where's my Crosby? From Crosby, we actually have the hospital in Staples, which is about right there. It's about 22 miles, so it's It's a very large area. And you know, you just heard from Steve from Malacca. Those school kids that live in these areas, see, even this area isn't rebuilt, everyone here gets 20, 30, 40 meg in those areas, the red areas. But everybody that lives within those boundaries, they got great internet at home. So those kids can use that iPad at home or their smartphone or whatever and get on the internet. What I struggle with, I live and breathe unserved areas, folks. This whole area down in here, I'm struggling. Diane Wells just sent me an email on Friday. She had a customer giving her a bad time right down here. No, it's right here. It's just outside of my Freedom area. I do have 700 on a tower right here. It goes to about right here. It doesn't get to him. So we've got unserved here. We've got all of this is underserved and unserved. We've got the same issues you do. Probably not as vast as you do in Kennebec and Isanti and so forth. But I understand rural. I'll tell you right now, my business, during my career, I've worked in Nickerson, Cromwell, McGrath, Fiddleston, Isle. I know those areas. I used to work for a different company back in those days. So I know rural, and I know what it's like to get fiber and broadband all the way down to here, or already out all the way up to here, or whatever. So it's a vast area, lots of windshield time for technicians, yes. I have, in the horseshoe, I have about 7,000 members, 7,000 households. Yeah, don't do the arithmetic, it'll scare the heck out of you. It'll scare the heck out of you. Now you have to remember that we've taken that, it's taken 50 years to get to that fiber to the home. I mean, we had DSL and everything else, so it was a step process to get there. But any greenfield that we do, we haven't plowed a piece of copper in a number of years now. We try to go all fiber. I predict that this fiber that we're putting in, let me back up, we've got fiber that we've been using for almost 38 years already. And the quality of the glass today, it'll last 50 plus years. And the neat thing about it in Brainerd and Baxter, I told the city councils and the leaders,